Hello everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining our webinar, Industrial IoT in Action, Transforming the Industrial Enterprise, part of the TechCelerate Digital Series with London Tech Week. I'm your moderator, Jeremy Coward, Content Marketing Lead for Internet of Things World Europe and Community Manager for the IoT Institute. Today's webinar is brought to you by IoT World Europe, the London-based conference 100% focused on putting the industrial Internet of Things into action. IoT World Europe is one of the 8 leading technology shows that make up TechCelerate, London Tech Week's anchor event. This June, TechCelerate welcomes 800 speakers, 8,000 companies and 15,000 attendees across 3 days. If you'd like to attend IoT World Europe or TechCelerate, we'll provide more information on both events before the end of today's session, along with an exclusive discount code for you to use while purchasing your pass. And now it's time to introduce today's speakers. Joining us today, we have Alexandra Rehak, Head of the IoT practice at Ovum, and Eli Scher, Mobile and IoT Lead at the Robert Bosch Power Tool Corporation. First up is Alexandra Rehak. Alexandra leads Ovum's core IoT team within the enterprise area of research and consulting, and drives the overall Ovum agenda for IoT coverage and thought leadership across the vertical, technology, analytics, security, and consumer perspectives. Today, Alexandra will present on the drivers and business models for the industrial Internet of Things. Take it away, Alexandra.
Thanks, Jeremy. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today, and thank you, Jeremy, for the great introduction. I'm Alexandra Rehak from Ovum, and I'm going to talk with you for the next 20 minutes about drivers and business models for the industrial IoT. We'll cover off a few things during today's presentation. First, what are some of the key drivers behind industrial IoT deployment? Second, what types of IIoT applications are being deployed? Third, what types of new business models are emerging within the industrial IoT? And what are some of the most important challenges, fourth, that enterprises report? And finally, I'll share some key takeaways and recommendations from what we'll be discussing today and also from Ovum's work in this area generally. Just to share a bit about Ovum for people who may not know us, Ovum is the market-leading research and consulting business focused on helping digital service providers and their technology partners succeed in the digital economy. We have about 150 consultants and analysts worldwide across 20 different locations, and we're part of the larger Informa group. I wanted to start by sharing our segmentation for IoT verticals that we use at Ovum. And this is important because it basically sets out the framework for how we look at the world of enterprises in terms of IoT adoption, forecasts, when we do surveys, and so on. And what you'll see in the slide is that we segment the world into 9 key verticals that are seeing significant impact from the Internet of Things. And up there in the top right-hand corner, you see manufacturing and industry 4.0, as we call it, or manufacturing and industrial IoT. And I highlight this not only because we're talking about it today, but because in our research we find that this is one of the sectors that is most important in terms of IoT impact. And that's for a number of reasons, really to do with a few different things in terms of macro drivers. One is that we see the IoT as a natural fit for bringing efficiency to a lot of processes within manufacturing, also construction, which we include in this category. So a lot of areas where great efficiencies can be achieved, where higher productivity can be delivered, better quality, and so on, using IoT solutions for that. It's also a sector in terms of the industry overall, which is generally faced with small margins and a lot of economic pressure on the industry generally. So there's really a constant need for cost savings, to get costs down, to get processes more efficient, and to improve quality, and also to achieve some measure of competitive differentiation in delivering all of those things and in delivering products. And the IoT can help in all of those ways. So it's a great fit for the industrial sector. If you look at some of the drivers on the supply side, a lot of those are linked back to technology. And what we see here is really two main categories of technology drivers, areas where there are significantly declining costs that's driving take-up. And I should say this applies across the IoT generally, but particularly so for industrial IoT. And on the right, areas where there are significant new technology developments that are driving things forward. So in terms of declining costs that are serving as drivers for IoT development in industry, that includes declining costs for cloud storage and cloud compute, as well as greater capacity for both storage and computing power. And you see figures of 50% drops in cost annually for those services. That is certainly dramatic in terms of being a driver for taking things forward. Network capacity, and there we're talking really about connectivity. So while a lot of industrial IoT applications and solutions require short-range connectivity or fixed, a lot, and this will increase over time, require cellular M2M or indeed LPWAN, low power wide area networking types of connections. And we see costs for these declining quite quickly as well. So LPWAN coming into the market is having a significant impact. A number of new technologies there, including narrowband IoT and LTE-M, with very, very low price points for connectivity. So as low as $1 per month, or even in some cases $1 per year, and that will continue to decline, and it places price pressure on the entire connectivity market. So that is good for customers and good for take-up of IoT. IoT chipsets and modules, so again, that's a story of increasing competition and declining costs and greater capacity. So a lot of impact there as well. Just to pick out one example, for new narrowband IoT technologies, we've gone from 2 or 3 chipset manufacturers at this time last year to now 17 different chipset vendors globally making NB-IoT chipsets. So, again, very, very fast developments will certainly have an impact on cost and on commercialization. On the new technology development side, you see a whole menu of technologies there on the right, and there are plenty more that we didn't have room to include today. But edge computing and edge analytics is certainly something that is having a big impact, that's bringing analytics and processing power closer to the endpoint within the IoT network. So that is significant in terms of enabling new capabilities and new use cases as well. Machine learning and AI, which is something where we're sort of at the start of it's likely to be a long and very interesting learning curve in terms of how that will be applied, but certainly a lot of the early use cases there are within the industrial IoT area. Cloud IoT platforms and platform as a service. So again, abstracting the platform to the cloud and enabling that to be updated regularly, purchased on an as-a-service basis by customers is certainly helping drive take-up as well. eSIMs, which are for manufacturers important really as a way to enable products that are going to be sold globally, to have embedded chips in them that can be used really anywhere in the world. And of course, 5G, which is bringing a lot of new capabilities in terms of network capacity and different ways of slicing the network to enable IoT solutions to sit on different parts of it as appropriate. So lots of supply-side technology drivers that are quite important here. And in addition, ecosystem evolution that is key in terms of who's investing in this area and who's bringing these solutions to market. And again, it's a wide range of players. So that includes industrial technology players. It includes communications infrastructure and IT players as well, communication services providers, GAFA, so Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon, all making inroads into the industrial IoT, even though we might think of them primarily as consumer-oriented companies, and a plethora of industrial IoT startups as well. So we've talked about supply-side drivers for the industrial IoT. It's also important to look at demand-side drivers, and a great way to do that is through looking at survey data from enterprises that are deploying IoT solutions already. So Ovum's just completed a survey of such enterprises. We spoke to about 1,343 enterprises worldwide who are actively deploying IoT projects, and talk to them about what they're doing, why they're doing it, what kinds of challenges they see, and so on. And when we ask them about the main goals of IoT deployment, and this is just industrial IoT deployers, so a subset of that overall group, really the top 4 areas focused on cost reduction and competitiveness and productivity and efficiency. So reducing overall costs was absolutely the top goal, followed by increasing competitiveness, improving business processes, and improving employee productivity. So these are kind of classic IoT goals that you would expect. And then if you look down at the gray bars, the next group is much more around growing new revenues. So growing revenues from existing products or developing new revenue streams. And a lot of industrial firms, manufacturing firms are looking to IoT solutions to help them do this. Now, what was interesting as well was some of the more aspirational goals that we saw for IoT deployment. And I've circled one here, which is shifting to as-a-service or usage-based business models, and we'll come on to talking about business models in a few minutes. But that is definitely something that a fair minority of the manufacturing firms and construction firms that we spoke to are interested in. So about 20% of them had that as one of their top 3 IoT goals. So it's a little further out in terms of attractiveness, but still certainly top of mind for a reasonable chunk of the companies and the sectors that are using IoT already. Now, if we look at what types of applications are being deployed, to understand the opportunity here and really what's driving that, what we see on the left is that about 37% of companies are deploying IoT applications related to optimizing operations or automation. So, what you would expect within a manufacturing environment. Following that was workforce management and optimization, and then a couple of more sort of simple and straightforward applications, remote monitoring and asset tracking. And then we've got about 28% who are deploying predictive maintenance or planning to deploy predictive maintenance IoT solutions. And obviously in a manufacturing and industrial environment, that is absolutely critical to maximizing uptime for heavy equipment, for anything involved in the manufacturing process. So no big surprise there that rate is high. The final group in our top set was, again, around customer management and customer experience optimization. And this kind of goes back to that idea of using the IoT to differentiate, to provide more customized products, to provide better information back to customers about what their products are doing, and to allow a tighter customer relationship there. So a lot of interest in that in the industrial IoT sector. Now, we've seen that some of the goals here are quite strategic rather than just tactical. And given that, it's interesting to look at how IoT fits in with organizational strategy for players in the market. And what we found was that for half of the industrial IoT players, they identified IoT as a core element of a digital transformation strategy that they were undertaking across the whole organization. So that is definitely a high percentage. Given the types of objectives that we've just seen in terms of industrial IoT deployment, it's no surprise that IoT initiatives are considered strategic for a lot of manufacturing and industrial deployers, and they're led from the top in many organizations. So if you look at the chart on the left, we asked enterprises within the sector about how the IoT fits in with their organizational strategy. And what we saw was that for about half of them, it's what we call a broad strategic IoT deployment. So IoT is being built into the company's roadmap across multiple departments and multiple products. And for another 37%, it's a core initiative, so it's part of a larger overall digital transformation initiative that's going across the whole company. So very strategic for over a third and a very significant set of initiatives across multiple parts of the organizations for about half of companies in this sector. So quite important. And if you look at who's leading the IoT initiatives within the organization, what you see is that actually just over a third are led by the IT department, who you sort of consider the traditional buyer here. But you've got about half or more than half that are led at C-level. And that is, I think, very interesting and important to remember for providers, that you've got board and CEO level leadership for just about 20% of deployers within this sector. You've got the CIO or the CTO leading. You've even got the CMO leading in some cases. So very senior level attention to IoT projects, and that obviously has a lot of impact throughout the organization. What I'd like to do now is talk for a few minutes about IoT-enabled business models, and specifically how those are playing out within the industrial IoT. So we at Ovum have identified really three key types of new IoT-enabled business models. And again, this goes back to the idea that this is really a strategic and transformational initiative for a lot of companies. On the left, we have what we call event-based or usage-based business models. Typically, those are in the B2C area, and it's the kind of thing that we are all familiar with through Uber. For one major example that we all know, it's a sharing economy type of process, or an event-triggered type of usage-based business model, where you have a customer that's paying only or mainly on a trigger event. So when they rent a bicycle, when they take an Uber ride, when somebody breaks the glass on their car, which is what you see here. So that is enabled through the IoT, through sensors, and through the data analytics that go along with that. Moving to the right, you have what is more of becoming a more common business model within the industrial IoT. It's what we call the as-a-service business model, and we'll talk more about this in a few minutes. But essentially, it's taking that usage-based concept and moving it into the B2B world within industries as a managed service approach to delivering what used to be a product sale. And finally, on the right, you have what we call the data leveraged business model, where you're taking that IoT-generated data and using that as a basis for creating new revenue streams. So that is more aspirational for a lot of companies right now, but it's certainly something many have in mind in their deployment strategies. So the as-a-service business model concept in the industrial sector is not new. So that's been around for a while. You've seen it with GE, and the example that you see here at the top, jet engines as a service, is one that is commonly cited within the industrial world. You're getting, as Rolls-Royce has said here, power by the hour. You're paying based on usage, or in some cases based on outcome, where you have actually got the outcome of whatever process or whatever product delivering the service used as the way for charging for that. We're seeing that now coming into other areas, so street lighting networks as a service. Here's an example from Silver Spring, which deploys connected street lighting networks across a number of different areas in the US and globally, and rail as a service from Hitachi. So these are just a few examples. The idea generally is that you're taking a very capital intensive, typically type of investment or product sale, and you're converting that to a service-based type of transaction with a longer customer relationship, with a lower upfront investment, and IoT enabled to allow you to measure usage and to charge accordingly, or indeed to measure outcomes and deliver a service based on SLAs. If you take that to the next level, what you see really is taking those usage-based or as-a-service business models and making them what we call circular. And you see that coming from a number of players in the market now. So not only are you as a customer paying on a usage basis, but what's happening is that the IoT connectivity, the sensors, processing, and so on are enabling you to achieve significant energy savings, to reuse materials, and to contribute generally to sustainability. And a lot of the time that those elements are built into the service provision contract, and all of that is IoT enabled. So the example we have here is Philips Lighting as a service. That's a usage-based IoT proposition as a customer, and typically the customer will be a large campus, an airport, or similar. You are paying per lux, so by the amount of light that you use. The data collected is then being used and analyzed to support predictive maintenance, to support efficient energy usage, and to bring some of that energy and some of those materials back into use so that you are saving money through doing that, as well as hopefully helping the environment. So a lot of goals that are kind of aligning here, sustainability goals and cost savings objectives as well, and hopefully a better and longer and stronger customer relationship for the provider. So just supporting that, in our survey, we found that over half of manufacturers who are deploying IoT said that flexible commercial models were essential or were very important to them when choosing an IoT supplier. And this is part of the reason to be able to enable these new and more flexible as a service type business models. So we've been talking a lot about changes to business models, changes to processes, a lot of disruption from the IoT. It all sounds very positive and exciting, but of course there are many challenges associated with this for enterprises adopting industrial IoT solutions. So in our survey, we looked at some of these. What came out on top was the challenge of integrating with business processes, so what you would expect within a business model transformation kind of situation. A lot of concern as well about managing diverse technologies related to the IoT, complexities of integration with existing infrastructure, and a lot of concern as well over costs, both upfront and ongoing. And I think the message here for providers is that a lot of companies need better visibility of what they will get from the IoT and how it will scale in order to take that next step in terms of deployment. So to sum up, just a few takeaways and recommendations. So as we said, the manufacturing and industrial sector is really one of the most important IoT vertical opportunities. A number of supply side drivers related to technology, both cost reduction in technology, new technology developments, a lot of people and companies coming into the IIoT ecosystem that are driving things forward. On the demand side, a need from companies in the sector to achieve cost savings and improved efficiency and competitiveness, and also to gain some measure of differentiation. We talked about the most important applications, which are around optimization, monitoring and tracking, predictive maintenance, and customer management. And we talked about how IoT deployments are strategically important for industrial firms. So for providers, what this really means is a need to gear engagement efforts accordingly, and not only to the IT department. On the business model front, we see the IIoT enabling as a service business models, but these are appearing in a number of different areas where we see them substituting in for heavy upfront investment requirements. It's important to note that take-up of these is going to be slow in most areas. Transformation is not a fast process, so this is not something to be discouraged by, but just to keep expectations in line with reality. Some of the challenges highlight this, though challenges around business model changes, business process changes, data ownership as well, and governance comes up as a concern a lot, and just customer education. So our final recommendation for providers is to provide support for industrial sector customers, both with flexible commercial offerings for the IoT, and also case studies demonstrating benefits, helping them really get to grips with what they can get out of this in a clear, demonstrable way. And as well, to make sure that it's clear how sustainability goals, which may be further out, are lining up with cost savings objectives using IIoT to deliver on that. So with that, I'll finish off. Thank you very much. And I'd like to now hand over to Eli Scherer from Bosch. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandra, for that insightful presentation. Next up, as Alexandra mentioned, is Eli Scher, Head of IoT and Mobile at the Robert Bosch Power Tool Corporation. Eli has an extensive background in all aspects of an IoT application. He has worked on industrial and consumer-grade solutions with various IoT platforms. His technical knowledge from the device through to the application layer helps him coordinate full-stack implementation. Eli's main focus today is on IoT services and solutions to construction sites. Today, he'll speak on the use of IoT in construction and look at some specific Bosch use cases. Eli, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jeremy, and thank you, Alexandra, for a good lead-in. And IoT in construction, what is the state of construction today? This is a kind of a big question when we talk about IoT, and even when you look at IIoT applications. You really have to consider the numerous moving components of what you manage when you're trying to look at integrating an IoT solution into a beneficial situation for whatever industry you're looking at. And specific with construction, we're talking large commercial construction. This can be sports arenas, large buildings for multiple residential units, business offices as well. So you really have to consider all the different pieces that get involved among all the stakeholders. So when you look at a construction site, it isn't as necessarily standard organization as you would have on a manufacturing floor. The sites are rather large. There's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of stakeholders that get involved. And when you look at integrating technology into that, you have to consider every stakeholder's viewpoint and point of view in order for the adoption and the benefit of that solution to take hold. So it's a lot of what Alexandra was pointing out from both the business aspect as well as the product aspect to how you actually get good adoption and use case out of these IoT solutions. On a large construction site too, you're not ever in a standard situation. So one manufacturing line might look very similar to another manufacturing line. Typically, no building looks the same as any other building, especially when you're trying to get unique architecture, things that have never been done before. And so your solutions have to be able to adapt into those situations. What we do at Bosch is really take a user focus. So we find that instead of looking at a specific complex or a specific industry within construction, really understanding what the user needs are and the benefits are helps us to design solutions and business models around IoT that provide a huge benefit to those individual users. So whether this be a construction foreman, a day laborer who's working on the site, or even the back office, the solutions have to fit into their individual pain points, providing a benefit to those pain points, alleviating some of the problems so that the technology just doesn't become another thing on their list of things to do. It becomes actually seamlessly integrated into their workflow. So when Bosch looks at the connected job site, if you will, we really look at transforming the site using some of our innovative systems and building this around data collection and project management. We want to be able to organize and create better productivity, really allowing for, at a high level, to track, manage, and localize either work equipment or staffing or other aspects of the flow of the job site itself. One of the products that we have that is doing this today is a product that we call Bluehound. So this dives into how we position our IoT solutions. You can see at the forefront, we really see this as a service solution. So when we talk IoT, we're talking about whole level services that we can provide. Again, this is toward the large and mid-sized contractor around large commercial construction sites. Our IoT solutions provide these kind of unique points: user-driven customization, cost accounting, certification tracking, asset information storage, delivery tracking, and hierarchy asset assignment. So what Bluehound is it's an asset management service for construction. We enhance this with our, what most people would consider the heart of the IoT, which is the hardware. So we enhance it with our hardware solutions, but the basic solution of this is really a service solution that builds around asset management. One of the key pain points within the construction industry is they don't know where their assets are, and they have trouble understanding the flow of those assets all the way from warehouse to job site and then project close. So being able to follow the asset when it's in maintenance, being able to follow it when it's on site, and really understand that whole workflow. So the Bluehound system itself is an IoT solution, but it incorporates all the different levels, from inclusive of a back-end service network that allows for the data collection and data synthesis, so you get some highlights of reporting and aspects of that. A mobile gateway, so we utilize gateways that exist today within construction, so the mobile phone being kind of one of the gateways, that's the current solution, and then the IoT sensor device itself that can be attached to any asset on a job site or connected to a job site, whether it be a vehicle, a large job box or gang box that assets are stored within, the asset itself, anything along those lines can be utilized with a sensor that then works within the overall system. In order to do this, what Alexandra touched on too is that we needed to look at this from a different business model approach. So we know that technology adoption in some industries is more difficult than in others. And in order to ensure that the technology is being utilized properly, we had to change the model from a hardware model more to a service-based approach. So we include the hardware, as I said, it's a hardware enhancement. We build this around a service or subscription model, a monthly license fee, so that what you're paying for is the monthly service benefits. You're not paying for any of the deployment or the hardware that's required to make this work. We do give you the option to have deployment help and setup within Bosch. So Bosch can come out and really help ensure that the deployment goes smoothly. This allows us, again, to help with building the technology into your workflow instead of trying to make it an additional task. We want to make sure that our IoT solutions fit seamlessly into the daily flow. And this is, again, really done from the viewpoint of having a user-centered design approach, understanding the warehouse managers, the superintendents, the pro users on these job sites, and where they fit into this chain and where their benefits are. And we build the business model around that concept of what they're used to doing so that we don't create an additional way for them to understand how to utilize this system. So it's really fit for their needs within this industry. So what does this look like? Let's dive into a case study of a deployment that we actually have. So these are tales from the field of what one of our ENR Top 100 companies looked like before we got there. You can see they were managing assets and workflow very much manually. They had a lot of paperwork. Sometimes they were printing 7,000-page reports to understand where all their assets were on a weekly basis almost, and combing through those manually. They have a bunch of whiteboards and papers on the wall, which you can imagine sometimes those are falling off or getting erased, so not a great way to store information. When products were coming back, there was a rack that you see here where assets were placed, and this was manually audited weekly to see what actually had come back. So when things were delivered, they didn't actually know if it was still out on site or not. And then we were able to implement some of our IoT solutions, so the Bluehound product itself. And you see them on the right-hand side of this image here, really putting that into use. So what benefits did they get from this system? You can see that some of their problems were that they roughly lose around 40,000 tools and equipment that are misplaced or lost. So this is products that they just don't know where they are. They could still be in use, they could be in maintenance, they could be on a different job site they didn't know, but they have to consider it lost at that point. And so we're able to digitize and automate this so that they're more easily able to track these assets. There was also an unnecessary amount of time actually looking for these assets. So if they were able to find them, there was a lot of time to figure out, should they get a replacement just to avoid the hassle, or should they spend the amount of time combing through sites, calling people, and making sure that they had the right equipment so that they didn't have to incur another equipment cost. So with our tool tracking ability with the tags, the IoT tags themselves, as well as understanding kind of equipment location based on those tags and based on the software assignment of those, we're able to provide a real benefit of reducing downtime on these sites, which keeps these sites working much more efficiently. And then we're able to do also kind of personnel tracking on this as well. So when workers come into work, we can check them in, check them out, understand where employees are on a given site so that if there's an evacuation, we can make sure they got off the site. And we do that just by kind of flipping the model of, instead of tagging an asset, we tag locations on job sites and understand when people go in and out of those. And so these are some of the value propositions that the Bosch Bluehand system can actually bring, and the returns that we're actually seeing out of our main customers. But we don't look at IoT just ending there. This is one great use case of what we're able to actually show with one of our leading customers in this space. But we have a much bigger future outlook, is to bringing efficiency to the job site. So when we look at the connected job site, again, we break it down into several pain points that exist today where IoT can solve these solutions. So whether it be with constructions and tools, among some of the points that Alexandra had talked about are key drivers of understanding equipment uptime and things, as well as material flow and assignment around a site. Yes, there's a lot of equipment and tools on a site, but if you think about the complexity of just hard materials, whether it be concrete, lumber, fixtures, et cetera, that go into building large commercial sites, that flow of that material that is there becomes a huge impact as well to efficiency and productivity. Security on job sites, always a key driver among a lot of industries. Project management and safety are two other main aspects. And then we also look at kind of environmental impacts and waste and scrap materials. So what's coming off the site and how to maintain those. So these are some of the areas that IoT will eventually build out those use cases and models to help support building out a greater view for where Bosch can really bring together this connected job site with some of our solutions and understandings within the industry. So this has given a good dive into a true use case of where IoT is impacting an industry from several different areas. I really appreciate you guys spending some time on this webinar, being a part of it with Alexandra and Jeremy setting the stage for IIoT theory and practice and also application. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Eli, for that excellent presentation and case study. So this June, 145 industrial experts like Alexandra and Eli will take the stage at Internet of Things World Europe in London to share industrial IoT strategies, hurdles, and success stories. As an attendee of today's webinar, you're entitled to 15% off your IoT World Europe conference pass using VIP code Digital Series, and that's all capitals, all one word. Be there to hear more from 145 speakers alongside 4,000 attendees, all of whom are IoT professionals. 2018 speakers include Davina Pasta, Chief Digitization Officer at Siemens, Stuart Johnston, Industrial IT and Automation Manager at SIG, Deborah Sherry, SVP and Chief Commercial Officer for GE Digital, and a whole host of others. You can visit the event website for the agenda, show features, full speaker lineup, and more. Or you can get 20% off when buying a premium pass to Techcelerate to access every one of our 800 Tech Guru speakers across all 8 shows, which includes IoT World Europe and also 5G World, Augmented Reality and Virtual Reality World, or AR and VR World, and Smart Transportation and Mobility. And that's the same VIP code, Digital Series, all capitals, all one word. We'll email you with full details and the discount code next week. So now I believe we have time for a few quick questions with our speakers to follow up on what they covered in their presentations. Alexandra, Eli, are you ready?
Ready to go, Jeremy.
Nice.
Yep.
So, Eli, we'll start with you. About a year ago, we spoke and you said you anticipated that industrial IoT would be pretty commonly implemented by businesses in 2 to 3 years' time. So now that would be 1 to 2 years' time. Yeah, a year down the line, do you still expect that to be the case?
Yeah, I mean, I think we do start to see more adoption and thought leadership in this area from companies that are looking to transform the way that they do business. I think some of the hurdles are starting to get reduced. Not that they'll ever go away completely, but we start to see a lot more use cases of actual implementation, and from those getting a lot more learning. So I still do believe that in 1 to 2 years' time, we'll see much more mass spread of IoT in the industry, and a lot more companies who are embracing the benefits of these types of solutions. I think also through that, it'll exponentially grow as more data is collected, so that the solutions become that much more relevant. I'm maybe a little optimistic in this point, but I do believe that we'll see much more widespread IoT solutions in the market and a lot of case studies within the next 2 years.
And Alexandra, giving an analyst perspective, is Eli being too optimistic, or do you think 1 to 2 years is a reasonable time frame?
So I think more will happen in 1 to 2 years, absolutely. I mean, we're definitely seeing progress. I'm maybe a little less optimistic, just from where I sit, but that doesn't mean I'm not optimistic for the medium to long term. I absolutely am, because I think the more you can demonstrate the impact of these solutions in industrial settings, and I think we've just seen a great example from Eli, the more it will become a normal thing to take them up. I think we're still kind of at the start of the whole adoption process. And I think generally what we see is that a lot of organizations adopting IoT are just adopting it in one area or for one application or use case. And they're not yet at the point of expanding out to that kind of broader vision of what the IoT can do that Eli was sharing at the end of his presentation. So I think we're some way from that. It's still a little more in the proof of concept. We're going to implement in one area and kind of see how that goes. But I think it will definitely continue to grow and see a lot of benefit coming from it.
Got it. And you're actually on the speaker lineup for IoT World Europe this June. What recommendations do you expect to be making to your audience?
So I think a few areas, really. I mean, for us, we're always looking out for use cases that are scalable and with specific KPIs, specific evidence to support that. I think that really drives the market forward. One of the challenges with IoT is that the solutions tend to be, even though they seem similar in terms of the basic technology or the basic use case, actually in the implementation stage, when you come down to it, they're quite customized. Which I think Eli was referencing as well. So that scalability is really, really important, and seeing where that's coming up. I think the other thing we're looking out for really is open technology ecosystems. So, whether that's open APIs, whether it's open data sharing within certain areas, looking at standardization of certain technologies. A lot of what will drive this forward is around those areas of openness and standardization, rather than kind of companies continuing to go down the road of proprietary solutions or things that just work with one provider. So a lot more in that area to explore, I think.
And Eli, you've spoken previously at our events. What recommendations do you find yourself making to industrial enterprises?
Yeah, I think, the biggest thing is to start to look into it, really evaluate this from the business practices that they do today and understanding that there could be more efficient ways and more productive ways to service their customers and themselves, and start that exploration. And then from there, it's really easy to start with small pilots to gain traction in these areas, both internally and externally viewed from the companies themselves. And so I think the more that companies open themselves up to that, the more that this adoption will increase.
And when you were embarking on the IoT projects you just presented on, did you look anywhere in particular for inspiration or ideas when planning and implementing?
Yeah, we canvassed a lot of other solutions that were out there. The nice thing about Bosch is that we touch a lot on IoT or Industry 4.0 and have solutions in those areas that we could reference. When we start to look at construction, we have some smart agriculture solutions as well. So there's some baseline industries that we could look at that trend the same way. But we also took just a big focus, as I mentioned, is to talking to the users and really driving this from the user perspective of what they would be willing to try out, where their benefits most came from, and how we could integrate those solutions into their workflows. And that made the barrier to entry much less difficult because we had started from their perspective, as opposed to coming to them saying we've solved their problems.
And Alexandra, a common issue that I've seen cited a lot around IoT implementation in businesses, particularly industrial IoT, is getting the buy-in of executives. Is that something you're seeing a lot of? And do you have any particular recommendations for how one might get executive buy-in on an IoT pilot and project?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think one of the kind of common patterns that we've seen is companies, particularly in the technology space, going direct to the IT department to try to sell these solutions in. And as we showed in the survey, and as we've just heard from Eli, it's about a lot more than that. It's actually about, implementing a change to a business process, understanding it first, and then kind of putting it in the context of, well, this is actually part of how you digitize your business, and this is part of a wider transformation strategy. There's a certain amount of, you might call it fear of missing out if you were talking about consumers, but there's that as well in the industrial sector. So you have that force kind of pushing against the force of natural inertia and resistance to change in many sectors. And I think, some level of fear about what disruptors may do coming into the market, whether they're targeting a specific vertical or a specific type of application, companies that are more agile, that are startups or that are coming from the internet space, who understand very well how to use data, might kind of make a jump over some of the traditional providers to these verticals, or providers of technology to these verticals. So there's that element as well in terms of making the argument for why this is important. But a lot of it is just about helping companies at all levels, from the senior C-suite, down to, as you say, the guy on the ground who's, doing whatever key job he's doing on the construction site, is to understand where there's some benefit for them in this and get buy-in at multiple levels.
And Eli, from a first-hand perspective, have you had any issues getting executive buy-in, or have you developed any tactics for getting it, either at Bosch or with any of the companies you work with?
Yeah, I mean, it's not to understate the challenges of what it takes to transform a company or a mindset. As Alexandria was saying, it's part of a bigger transformation that needs to take place within a culture of an organization. So there've definitely been a lot of initial learnings and challenges that took place to understand how far we could push it from the start. You know, when someone comes in and promises the world with technology, usually there's a high cost to that, as well as it doesn't feel like it's actually a promise. It feels like it's someone selling snake oil to you. So we had to really meter the amount of expectation that we could drive in, and pull ourselves back in some cases to reduce the technology impact that would occur if we tried to push full solutions. A lot of our learnings is to really step in and step in with the users or the companies themselves, and then take the next step with them. So not try to do any big leaps, not try to promise the world, but really try to understand where we could have a big, quick win, so a big impact with a small solution, and then where we could grow and build from there.
Thanks, Eli and Alexandra. I'm afraid that's all we have time for today, but huge thanks to you both for your time and outstanding presentations. For more information on IoT World Europe and our IoT World series of events, please visit our event website, www.iotworldeurope.com, our community site, the IoT Institute, and our social media channels, where, regardless of platform, you can just search IoT World Series. And don't forget to take advantage of your exclusive webinar attendee discount when booking tickets to IoT World Europe. The VIP code is Digital Series. All capitals, all one word. Or for more on Techcelerate, visit the event site, tmt.connect365.com/Techcelerate, the community site, TechX365, and social media channels. Just search for Techcelerate. For a 20% discount on your Techcelerate Premium Pass, use the same VIP code, Digital Series. On behalf of IoT World Europe, Techcelerate, and London Tech Week, thank you all so much for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.